Hey guys, this is Joe Harper with Reformed Truther Ministries. We are here for another exciting video today. Spring has arrived and it is time to get back out into the field and back out to doing good old-fashioned field research. And today we are here in the great state of Illinois at the ancient city of Cahokia. So behind me you see what is called Monk's Mound, which is the largest mound in North America. That is the largest earthen structure in North America. So that's a lot of dirt back there that was used to build this thing. And this is a site here. I'll do a panorama of it in just a minute. But there are mounds located all over this area. And Cahokia was a city. And according to mainstream archaeology and mainstream historians, they would say that this goes back to around 950 AD, 1000 AD. So they would say that this was a city that had 10 to 15, maybe even 20,000 people here. So this was a city in North America that was rivaling medieval London, or even larger than medieval London, which existed at around the same time. Now, we're interested in this city, one, because it's an ancient civilization that existed on North America, and it may help us as we've tried to discover the lost history of North America. But we are particularly interested in these mounds because of their connections to the Nephilim. We know that mounds that have been built all across this continent, the mound builders, there have been skeletons of giants found in these mounds. So even though we're not saying that there are necessarily skeletons here on their site, maybe there are, maybe that's been covered up. I'm just being careful not to make claims that I cannot necessarily prove. We are saying that this is likely, in reality, in contrast to the secular archaeological establishment's claims, we are saying that this is probably built by the very same mound builders that built the rest of these mounds across North America. So as we're going to see here, the mound behind me, Monk's Mound, we're going to see that it is the largest pyramid north of the Mesoamerican pyramids in places like Mexico or the Yucatan Peninsula and going down into Latin America. And so this is a very significant site. This was a thriving city that existed here. And mainstream secular archaeologists, they really will say it arose around 900, maybe some will even say earlier 700, and then they say around by 1400 it's gone. And they don't really have a lot of answers for how this civilization arose up. They call it the Mississippian civilization or culture. And they don't have a lot of answers for how it disappeared. And the only thing they will say is they will claim it disappeared overnight. It disappeared very quickly. And obviously by the time the Western settlers from Europe reached the continent, this civilization is more or less gone. So there's a lot of questions here. And as we're going to see, there's more questions than answer. But I'm really going to film this area. I'm going to try to document this for everybody. And we're going to try to poke at some holes in the narrative and ask some very key questions about what is going on here in Cahokia, Illinois. So let's see what we find today. This panorama, guys, it gives you a really good idea of what these mounds are. And this is supposed to be where I'm standing, would have been the plaza or the city center of this city. So this whole area here, and we're gonna work our way up to the mound over there, Monk's Mound, but this entire area was said to be a city with 10 to 15,000 people that existed around 1000 AD and really was flourishing around 1100 AD. So that gives you some idea of the scale. I'll bring some more questions into that narrative as we move along. That is one big mound, fellas. Big. Very, very, very big. Here you guys can see how this mound, it's similar to other mounds we've seen in other parts of the country, such as Minnesota or Iowa or Wisconsin, similar to the site we went to in Wisconsin at Aztalan State Park. But you can see that this one here, and this isn't even the largest one on the site, is a particularly large mound. So you get a real sense of the scale of what we're looking at here. All right, everybody, here we are once again here at the site of Cahokia, and we have one of these mounds here behind me. And as you can see, it is very, very large. So this is very similar to what we've seen in other mound sites across the country. We've seen them in the state of Minnesota, my home state. We've seen mounds like this in Wisconsin. Remember, we went to Aztalan State Park, which is also considered a site of the Mississippian culture. So the same culture is supposed to have built this site as well. We saw mounds there. We've seen mounds in the state of Iowa. We've documented these mounds on our channel multiple times, almost to the point where I felt like I've done it too much. But this is very similar to what we've seen before. But the difference here is, if you look behind me, you see that this one is extremely large. So these are some big mounds. We know, I'm speculating that I think that perhaps we're not being told the whole story by the secular archaeological establishment. I keep saying that over and over again. It's kind of fun. Secular archaeological establishment. But what we're trying to see here, guys, is that I'm saying that the people who built this, what we're not being told the whole story about, that the people who built this, what are called the mound builders, I think are probably the same civilization that arose because the Nephilim reached this continent coming from other parts of the world, from the old world. And I've said that I believe in what is called the giant diaspora, where they were driven out of the Holy Land by the Israelites. We know from the time of Joshua through the Judges period all the way up to the time of the monarchy with Saul and David and Solomon. And they went north, they went west into the Mediterranean, north into Europe, and eventually they found their way over here. And so that's why we see that this Nephilim civilization was once here, but then it died off and it is gone now. But we have found evidence for this all throughout the country when you know the history of how these mounds were dug into. So this is all very relevant information for us. And this mound here is the same type of mounds that we've seen all across the country, but it's just a very large one. It's very evident to see. So this gives us a lot of insight at what it may have actually been going on in Cahokia. So one of the questions I have is it possible that this site is older than the date put forward by the secular historians of around 950 or 900 AD? That's question one. So question two is, where did this civilization come from? How did it arise? Especially if the history of North America that we're taught is always that these primitive tribes existed here, sometimes warring with each other, sometimes at peace with each other, but we don't really have a history of these advanced civilizations. And this site here isn't taught prominently in school. You have to be kind of a history archaeology nerd to know about Cahokia. A lot of Americans don't know about it. And then question three, how did this civilization disappear? These are all relevant questions that we need to be asking to get to the heart of what's going on at Cahokia. So one of the things I want to point out here about the site of Cahokia is there's a lot about this site that is very intriguing. In one of the mounds, Mound 72, there was a chieftain discovered. The remains of this chieftain was dug into. The remains were found in what is called Mound 72. And this chieftain, because of the beads and the regalia that was located on his person, they had a wing-like appearance. He has been referred to as the Birdman by archaeologists and historians. In the very same vicinity of this mound, we have found mass graves, which is indicated to us that this place was located, or there was ritual sacrifice going on in this site. So there's some dark history here. There's even some, if this place really is connected to the Nephilim, that would indicate that there was some dark spiritual stuff going on here. So there's a lot about this site that we don't know about. There's questions, why hasn't more excavations or research been done in this area? How far does the establishment want to go? And there's questions about, are they holding back details from the masses, which I am inclined to think that they are. So that just gives you some more context about some of the things that have been found here in Cahokia. Interesting stuff. There it is, guys. That's Monk's Mound. That is the largest earthen structure in North America, and that is the largest pyramidal structure north of Mesoamerica. So that is a massive earthen mound. And according to the mainstream archaeologists, that would be where the chieftain or ruler of this city of Cahokia would have been located on top of that mound. And that would have been both a religious and a political leader, similar to other civilizations where the political and the divine would be connected, such as with the pharaohs in Egypt or Mayan rulers of the various city-states in the Yucatan. The ruler Cahokia was supposed to have been the same thing. So this is a very impressive structure. It's an impressive feat. And that's why Monk's Mound is so important for us to research in connection to the Nephilim. So we're going to get closer to it. We'll see what it looks like up close. All right, guys. So there's Monk's Mound. That is the pyramidal earthen mound structure that is relevant for us, for our purposes. So obviously we're going to go up the steps and we're going to go straight toward it. You can see there's some people walking up there. And if you're believing the narrative of what's told about this site, that would be where the chieftain of this city would have been. That's where he would have been located. There would have been a structure on top of that mound. So we're gonna hike up there, we're gonna take a panorama, and we're gonna go from there. So exciting stuff. All right, guys, we're getting ready to go up this mound here. We're gonna go up the mound, go up the steps, and see what things look like from the top. As you can see here, modern civilization has not failed to intrude on this ancient site. But a couple questions I want to put forward before I hike up this thing. One is, the question is, how did they build it, obviously, which obviously being an earthen structure isn't as impossible. It's not as intricate as, say, the pyramids at Giza. But that brings me to my second question is, here's another pyramid-shaped structure. Just as we have pyramids in Latin America, we have the pyramids in Egypt, we have pyramidal structures located all over the world. They're a universal archetype. Pyramids are ziggurats, structures that start with a very wide base and get narrower as you move toward the summit. And why is it that there is always these universal archetypes, just like how there's these archetypes of always there's a great flood, there's always serpents being venerated all over the world, there's always stories of giants, all of these things that go back to these biblical themes. We see them, and here being a pyramidal structure here in the state of Illinois, in the heart of North America, is another one of these archetypes. Fascinating stuff. And the other question is, this is more of an engineering type question that I didn't realize till I did the research. It would be very difficult if you're building this to compact all this together, to compact all that dirt, the tons and tons and tons of dirt that were used to build this thing. So there's a lot of questions that we have, and you wonder if it was in fact some larger people who were building this than maybe we would initially think. Interesting stuff. Let's head up to the top. All right, guys, here's the view from the top of the mound, and it is, as you would expect, a spectacular view. Yeah, it's really something to see. And there you can see St. Louis there on the other side of the river. Phenomenal. Spectacular. This is kind of a cool angle, guys. So you see it from here, and then you can see how much it really slopes. Gives you a better perspective of some of the scale of the mound, which you don't always get if you just get the panorama from super far away. I mean, obviously you need to get that too, but when you get a little bit closer, you can see how big this thing really is. It's a big mound. Here's another great panorama of the mound, guys, from a different angle. So that's the north side on the right. We came up the south side. So that means that we are located on the east side of this mound, and we know that too because if you look up, the sun is setting to the west. So we were able to get some geographical alignment here, which is kind of cool. But you can see this thing is just massive. What a massive, impressive mound. This has just been so cool to document this for this ministry. Well, all right, guys. So we're standing here. We got one of the mounds located here behind me, and we've walked a lot of these grounds here today. It's gotten a little warmer out. I've taken the sweatshirt off here. The sun has come up. And some people may be wondering, well, Joe, why is it that you immediately seem to question what is the mainstream narrative of archaeology or of history? Why can't you just accept that this was a city of humans that was existed 1,000 years ago? Why do you bring in these connections to the Nephilim? And I think that's a fair enough question. And here's a few points I'll make on that point. One, it's conjecture, but it's informed conjecture based on the connections that we see to other sites across this country where there is evidence for the giants existing. So on the one hand, we can say we have mounds here, very large, undeniable, indistinguishable, or very distinct mounds, undeniable mounds, just like ones that have been found all across this continent, number one. We also see particularly with Monk's Mound that's over there that we've already filmed, we see that there is a pyramidal shaped structure, which goes back to the things that went on in the Near East in biblical times. That goes back to the ziggurats, the Tower of Babel, even the pyramids of Giza, which I've actually speculated are antediluvian. So we have further connections there. And we've seen that there is ritual sacrifice that was going on that site. All of these things point to and provide clues for us to understand that there may be more going on in this site than what we're being told by the mainstream establishment. I speculate that this site may be a lot older than we're being led on to believe, or what is being taught by the mainstream establishment. So I think it could be that because the mounds and the mound builders are far older than 1,000 AD. So I think that this site, or at least the mounds on this site, could be a lot older than 1,000 AD. So that's just my thoughts. Those are some of my reasons why I think there could be connections to this site to the giants. All right, guys, let's just review a little bit as we're moving toward wrapping up here. First thing I want to say is, as I said before, the site of Cahokia, according to mainstream archaeology, would be the largest city that ever existed in pre-Columbian America. There's supposed to have been between 10 to 20,000 people who lived there. Most estimates are around 15,000 or so. So that's once again on par or larger with medieval London around 1100, when this city was supposed to be at its peak and it flourished. But then archaeologists all agree, or at least what they're claiming, is that this civilization vanished overnight, but they don't really have any answers. So we have a lot of questions about the rise of this civilization and the fall of this civilization. The things that they will not touch in terms of questions is, can there be connections to the Nephilim, which I believe are the actual mound builders of the mounds across North America, and they have been buried in this place. There is religious and spiritual significance that can be found in clues in this site. This site is aligned with the constellations above, including the Draco constellation, the sun, the moon. There is astronomical significance to how this site was set up. As I said before, when they dug into one of the mounds where they found that prominent chieftain that's been referred to as the Birdman, based on the appearance of what was found, the regalia that was found with his grave, there, surrounding that mound, there has been found mass graves indicating ritual sacrifice, going once again back to that theme that we see connections with the Nephilim, because we always know that the sacrificing of humans, and in some parts of the world even cannibalism, are themes that always come up with giants and with the Nephilim. So we are seeing here a lot of themes that connect to things that we've seen in other parts of the country. We've seen that there is a lot about this civilization that we don't know. Even mainstream archaeologists admit that there are more questions than answers. So all that being said, I'm going to continue to hunt after the truth, hunt after the answers, and try to find the truth regarding the Nephilim. This has been my video here at the site of Cahokia here in Collinsville, Illinois. This is Joe Harper with Reformed Truther Ministries signing off. God bless everybody. If you have been blessed by the ministry of RTM, then please consider supporting our ministry. and check out our website at www.reformedtruther.com.